Today's sponsor is Audible, with an unmatched selection of audiobooks, original audio shows, news, comedy, and more. Get a free audiobook with a 30-day trial at audible.com/bballbreakdown. Will the dual role of coach and GM become extinct? How will D'Antoni and Harden affect Chris Paul's mindset? Are you as excited as we are for a Eurobasket? The only question left is, say it with me, you win. Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown podcast, a rare Tuesday podcast, but I'm always, as always, joined by Dave Dufour NBA. And Dave, we are in the dog days of summer, I would think it's safe to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I just told you, I just spent the last 2 hours watching Gordon Ramsay videos, and I'm getting fired up to buy a nice paella pan. So, yes.
I absolutely, and I would love to make paella. I like jambalaya. Anything that ends with a vowel, it pretty much is I'm in. And but yeah, I mean, I finished your Friends from College, and I'm now starting Ozark or Ozarks, which one you want to call it.
Do you watch Game of Thrones?
You know, I think I'm gonna have to just dive in. It seems too hard to start now.
No, you can start now and catch up. It's totally bingeable, and this season's almost over. There's only 3 episodes left. But see, I'm a book reader, and so this past week's episode was, kind of had some really huge things happen that, book readers have been waiting like 20 years for. So. Right,
but it's not, because this is not in the book, this part, right? This is all, they're just freelancing at this point.
Exactly. It hasn't been written yet. Now, I mean, I could sit and talk about the drop-off in quality once they surpass the books, but at the same time, they have an end in sight, and they've got to get there. So, they have to cut, I'm assuming they had to cut a lot of stuff. But,
okay.
Yeah, a lot of good TV, though. So, I mean.
Good. I hope so. I'm in a big workout kick, and I'm looking. I need more shows. But you're right. Game of Thrones would cover me for the rest of till the season starts. So probably. I should do that. But
yeah, well, Eurobasket's coming up though.
Oh, that's true. Good. I'm going to do some breakdowns of that for sure. So let's talk about some basketball, because there was some news that came up last Friday that was of interest, and that is that Doc Rivers. You can't call it anything but a demotion, right? He is now only the coach of the Clippers. He's no longer the GM. And, right, I mean, there's no other way to spin this, right? It's a demotion.
Yeah, and he's not the first one that we've seen this happen to this offseason, Mm-hmm. This is kind of the way I think that the league is going to go. They're going to go away from giving one guy all that power. And it's not even the power, it's the responsibility. It's too much work for one guy. And Doc was, in many ways, Doc the GM was Doc the coach's worst enemy. He never found that wing guy, the 3-and-D wing, never found him, never found a bench, and all of these other issues that the Clippers have had for the entire tenure, that Doc has been doing this. And so, hopefully, the most important part of this to me is that Doc didn't lose any money. Right. So he's getting paid the same amount. So
that is amazing. It's amazing that Ballmer. I mean, I guess what are you going to say? Hey, we got to take some money out of your contract that you already signed. So and maybe it was already built in. Like, no matter what happens, I get that money, which would have been really smart by Doc. But let's face it, it's not even about power. I don't think it's about power. I think it was about a coach not wanting to get fired. And what do you think? Okay, well, if I am the GM and the coach and I can't get fired, which I think we're all now starting to realize that's also a folly. It doesn't really preclude you from getting fired anyway. And now you got a situation where you have Budenholzer and now Doc Rivers, who they get in that job, they can't do both, and it's been a nightmare, and no one's really been able to do it. I mean, Stan Van Gundy's the last guy, right? And he has certainly not done a great job.
No, he's not been good, and a lot of people have brought up Pop. But that's underselling R.C. Buford's job. Right. Pop is obviously involved in front office stuff, but he's not making all of the decisions. From what I understand, Lawrence Frank was doing quite a bit of Doc's front office job during the season, but the kind of direction of the franchise was really coming from Doc. And I think with the Spurs, it's more of like a brain trust. And I think that works a little bit better. And I'm sure Doc is still going to be involved in personnel decisions. He's got 2 years left on his contract. They're talking an extension, which makes a lot of sense because the last thing you want to do if you're Doc Rivers or the Clippers is go into next season, with no extension or no plan in place, and you've kind of got this lame duck year as a coach. I would guess if they don't come to an agreement on an extension by the end of 2017, 2018, that Doc is out the door next summer. That'd be my guess.
I mean, it's interesting because wherever he's gone, he's kind of been on the verge of really being unsuccessful or at like mediocre at best. And he didn't make it after a couple of years in Orlando, even though I guess they people wanted to say he overachieved with one of those teams that was pretty bad, and they actually won somewhere close to 500. But he didn't make it there. I think he was about to get fired in Boston until they assembled one of the greatest teams of all time for him to coach. And probably one of the greatest coaching staffs as well. And so that really helped him. And here we are here. Now, it's kind of unfair because of the injury stuff that's happened in the past that's really derailed a lot of this stuff. And he does have – so he has a title under his belt, and he does have a Game 7 win over Pop, which you can't, ignore for however that happened. It just happened. So, there is some stuff there. But I don't know. I don't know if I'd have a huge amount of faith in Doc, beyond letting him see what happens this year with a brand new roster.
Well, and also think about the money. I mean, he's making $10 million a year now to just coach. That's a lot of money. And I know Steve Ballmer has the cash, and it may not concern him to pay that for your coach. And as coaches ourselves, right? Like I'm all for it. Let's pay coaches more. I think that'd be great. But it's a lot of money to pay a coach who's not really getting that you're not getting any boost from. I think that what they've done the last 5 years, or has he been there 5 years? 4 years, 5 years that he's been in LA. I think you could have gotten similar results from Vinny Del Negro.
Ooh.
We saw that.
I think so. I mean, I don't know. I'm really down on Vinny Del Negro, and I feel like, they were smart to get rid of him. But you have a point there because you have a nucleus there that's so good that you're going to find success no matter what. However, let's talk a little bit about Doc the coach because, now that they put away the GM Doc, what do we have? I mean, we do have some clever offense. We do have, trying to make the best of a difficult situation in theory with, Blake Griffin causing spacing issues. But we also have a culture of complaining to the refs. And I think we kind of forget about it as we get deeper into the off season, and you kind of like, this goes away, it's not there. And then as soon as the preseason starts up again, man, it's like, and this from the TV point of view, it's worse in person. Every call and every player, it's just a nonstop, and it's a real problem.
Well, how much? Chris Paul obviously is a huge part of that. I mean, he's been a referee complainer his entire career, and as a fellow referee complainer, as a coach, I'm more of a chatter. I'm not a complainer. I'm a chatter. I'm telling you if you make a good call, I'm telling you. If you make a bad call, I'm telling you. So you're hearing both sides from me. But I wonder how much of that was kind of overblown because Chris Paul was on the court a lot, and we saw Chris Paul arguing calls quite a bit. And I know that Doc definitely express his distaste, but so does Pop, and so do other guys. And I think that that the Chris Paul factor may have kind of skewed our view on that, and we won't know until the season starts because remember, they're starting this season minus Blake Griffin, so they're going to be. I think they're going to be bad. I think they're going to miss the playoffs.
Really? I don't know. They're the most intriguing team to me because I really can't figure out what they did. They got a good return for Chris Paul, as good as you're going to get.
Absolutely.
And and again, like Gallinari is like I live in this world where I just assume people are healthy. Although we do know that Blake won't be healthy for a little while in the beginning, but like Gallinari, I'm assuming he's gonna be healthy. He'll have a good year. He could play, small ball forward to start the season alongside DeAndre Jordan. They could be really fun and really difficult for other teams. But what isn't difficult is choosing Audible for all your book listening needs. I just got George Karl's tell-all on coaching in the NBA titled Furious George, and I cannot wait to fire it up on my headphones. And if you go to audible.com/bballbreakdown, you too can get a 30-day trial membership where they have an unmatched selection of audio programs. It's as easy as clicking on my link, downloading a free book, and letting your brain do the rest. I love listening to books in my car. I no longer mind running out to the supermarket or making that third trip to the mall to pick up my kid, since I know I can fire up another great basketball book and fill the time learning something about the game. Their app is also a must-have, where they have channels to discover more books you'll like, easy ways to share books with friends, speed control of the narration, and an easy way to switch back and forth between listening and reading the book without ever losing your place. So visit audible.com/bballbreakdown today and start listening. But let me go back to the complaining, because you do see Doc, you see Steve Kerr, and these guys will complain. But you have to draw a distinction. It is completely different with Doc. It is constant, and it's also just it's almost like he must annoy the refs more than anything else. It's got to be this annoying because it's over fraught with emotion, and that just plays right into Chris Paul's issues. Which, by the way, did you happen to see the little clip of him and Harden on the court together at Drew League? I
did see that. We should talk about that.
It's cut off. So just to give you an idea, if you haven't seen this for the listeners, something happens that I think was good on the offensive end for Harden and Chris Paul's team. Somebody scored or something. But on the way back, and they're waiting for the other team to come down and call a timeout, Chris Paul starts to kind of yell at James Harden, and he's motioning as if he should have done something else, like shoot a layup or instead of throwing a lob or something. And it looks like it's heated, and then all of a sudden the other team calls timeout, and James Harden just gives him a big hug as they walk off. But they cut it right when it looks like to me that Chris Paul is like almost about to push him away, and I can't get any more information about it. What do you think?
I think that James Harden may be good for Chris Paul from a attitude on the court standpoint, because James Harden. Obviously, his fatigue issues and the body language related to that, I think that's a real issue for him. He's just not one of those guys that's ever going to be like be able to play 48 minutes a night and never look tired. That's just not him. I mean, but he's still playing 40 minutes a night. He's going to look exhausted, but I think a lot of his body language comes from just being so physically spent, which is why Chris Paul is a great addition for him. And I think for Chris Paul, James Harden may actually kind of get him to relax a little bit.
Yeah,
and to enjoy the moment a little bit more. I mean, like James Harden looks like he's having fun out there, and I think that's important. That playing with joy, I think, is important. I think Chris Paul, he has moments, but he doesn't seem like a fun guy to play with.
Right.
James Harden does. I feel like I would love to play with James Harden, and I don't know if I would want to play with Chris Paul. I mean, yes, he's highly skilled and he's a great player and all this stuff, but I think the attitude stuff would start to wear on you after a while.
There's no question it has. It's worn on his teammates everywhere he's gone, and you're right. And that would be a great thing to rub off on him, is that YOLO, just put it away. And that is one thing that Chris Paul does not do. He does not put away these things that have already happened in the past, and it builds, and then it'll explode sometimes in quite unfortunate fashion for his team. And so that is fascinating. You're right. That would be something interesting to see how that's going to play out, because what you saw, from Harden was like, just come here and almost like wanting to give him a noogie or something, and it's like, we're winning. We just scored, something like that. It's not perfect. Basketball's not perfect, and we got to move on. And so I don't know though. It'll be interesting, and I think that we'll see those issues, those moments in the real regular season, and I don't know how it's going to play out.
So he's going to get it from both sides, because D'Antoni is the same way as a coach.
Yeah.
D'Antoni doesn't expect perfect play. I got a chance to talk to him at Summer League, and because I obviously love Mike D'Antoni, and I have patterned a lot of the ways I coach after D'Antoni. And so to hear him say some things privately that I just kind of did organically, just, hey, you know what? It should be fun. We're okay. Every now and then we're going to throw the ball away. It's fine. We're trying to do good stuff. That's good. And I think that hopefully those two strong personalities will win over, and Chris Paul will actually enjoy playing basketball again. I mean, not that I know that he hates it, but God, it just doesn't seem like he has a lot of fun. And I'd love to see. I like it when these guys look like they're having fun. Like, I loved when LeBron grabbed the beer and pretended to take a drink. Like, I love that stuff. Like that to me, it humanizes them. because when we're out there playing basketball, like as normal human beings, we're having fun with our buddies and we're talking smack and, we're goofing around. I like to see that these guys who are the best in the world at it are kind of the same. It's the one way we can all be on the same level. It's like, yeah, basketball's supposed to be fun.
You're right, but it's also another way of coping with an 82-game season, which is what is really necessary. And okay, the playoffs, I can get it. It's really intense. We can't be screwing around too much at all. But in the regular season is when you have a chance to play with some stuff and play funky lineups. And that damn defense, that damn offense will score sometimes. And what are you going to do? And that's the thing that we talked about a little bit. I like about D'Antoni is that sometimes coaches get so obsessed with the fact that you shouldn't ever allow the other team to score. And when you do, it's like the worst thing imaginable. And that's the problem. I think that's what Phil Jackson was really great at, is I think he was demanding of the defense, but I think he certainly understood that they're going to score close to 100 points on you every single game, no matter what you do.
Yeah, it's one of my pet peeves with Pop, and I don't have many, but I think that, the angry timeout that he calls, and he does it once or twice a game. Usually it's early in the third quarter too. It's like right after halftime. They give up a layup, one of the first two possessions, and then he calls the angry timeout. I just don't think that those are that constructive. Now, I'm not going to tell the best coach that's ever coached basketball that he's doing something wrong. It's just not my style. I'm much more that Phil Jackson. I'll let him figure it out. I don't like to call timeouts. I'm lucky that I don't have the TV timeout to deal with.
Well, the funny thing is D'Antoni in L.A. was the king of the angry timeout. I mean, he would call those things, and the march down, you can see it right before he's finished calling it. He's already halfway across the court, scowling and whatever. And by the way, part of it was probably frustration because
I was going to say
his offense wasn't being run correctly, and they'd get these corner threes with four guys along the baseline, and they would just be a layup on the other end before they could even turn their heads. And that's not how D'Antoni's offense is supposed to be balanced for shots.
How would you feel if you had the greatest pick and roll point guard and shooter at that point in history, and possibly the best pick and roll big man in history who wouldn't set picks for that point guard? That has to be pretty frustrating. I'll give him a pass.
You know what? I was picturing Nash and Stoudemire. You're talking about Nash.
I'm talking about Dwight Howard.
And Howard?
Dwight Howard would not set screens for Steve Nash. He would set screens for Kobe, but that was it. He would not operate in a screen and roll with Steve Nash.
Because it was too fast for him or something?
No, he just wouldn't do it. Didn't respect him.
Wow, I had not heard that.
Go back and watch. He just did not do it. He would not set pick and roll. He would not do pick and roll with Steve Nash. He wanted post-ups. Remember, he's one of those guys that I don't think he knows what he's good at on a basketball court. He can go out there and do a lot of things, but he doesn't know what he's good at, which is why he keeps saying that, he wants post-ups and all this stuff. And he's trying to shoot threes during the offseason and things like that. It's just he's literally one of the best pick-and-roll bigs in NBA history.
Right. And you know what?
And went away from it.
In the cascading events from out of Orlando, Van Gundy doesn't keep his job, where he was at his peak Van Gundy and at peak Dwight Howard in that system as well. And neither of them have recovered since then.
No. But now I will say this, that Van Gundy did fall up in Detroit, right? So he got what looked at the time to be a better job, where he had a young player in Andre Drummond that, a lot of people thought was kind of going to be the next Dwight, and that hasn't really worked out. And I think part of this, it falls at the feet of Van Gundy, the GM, which is kind of goes back to what we started talking about at the top of the podcast, getting Reggie Jackson. Reggie Jackson's just not that good. And, he's been hurt as well. So, there's a little bit of that, but he's also just not as good. Ish Smith has been the best pick and roll point guard they've had. This thing with KCP and literally losing a valuable player for nothing. It didn't make any sense. I get that they got Avery Bradley, and that's good. It was good for them, I guess. But you lost a valuable, young, talented player for nothing, and so you just can't do that. Yeah, in this NBA, you cannot do that, especially if you're a middling team, which they are. They weren't a playoff team this year. I don't think they've done anything to get themselves in the playoffs. I don't think Avery Bradley is, by himself good enough to do that. And I don't know that these guys have gotten any better.
Right.
Is Luke Kennard getting him into the playoffs?
By the way, the context of KCP choosing LA is he leaves the East, which was an easier path in the playoffs, to go to the West. He goes to a worse team, although they are, they're building something and they're on their way. But that definitely reflects poorly on Detroit. As part of that, like, where should I go? Should I stay? What would be a better situation? And that's really kind of revealing as well. Which also reminds me, by the way, really quickly, because we're talking about the coaches, I would have to imagine that the Doc Rivers decision has Jerry West's fingerprints all over it.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I mean, Jerry West made the Golden State Warriors successful by being a dissenting voice, and I wonder if he's not in LA doing the same thing. I'll have to ask him at some point.
Yeah. Who? Jerry?
Yeah, I'll have to ask Jerry West.
All right. Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll have to find out just how much influence he did have in Golden State too, because that I'm interested to hear that as well. But I think
from everything I've read, the reason Clay wasn't traded was because of Steve Kerr and Jerry West.
Yeah, I mean that's probably I'm sure that's true, and we'll see now. But that said, the timing of it was he comes in, and within a few weeks of Jerry West joining the club, all of a sudden Doc Rivers is now not the GM. So you have to wonder if that someone else's voice started chattering in Ballmer's here. Now Doc tried to spin it like he's like, oh well, we had Lawrence Frank in this position last year, and we were already talking about it then. So that's possible. But either way, it is I guess not to belabor that point, but yeah, to be able to do both is just not viable, which is kind of funny because we have a player who wants to be a player coach as well, and that's not viable either.
Wait, are you talking about LeBron?
I am.
Oh no.
It just hit me, but yeah, I mean, listen, he calls plays and he's trying to.
He's been doing a pretty good job. I mean, that's 3 straight finals appearance and a championship. That's not bad. That's actually, to me, that's an argument in favor.
Oh, really?
Him
I don't know. I mean, I'm looking back. I look at it since he started with Miami, and there's just enough evidence to me that when you watch how the offense runs, and I said this ad nauseum, so I don't want to belabor the point, but the idea that when you're charting what they're running and it's so random, no coach would ever control an offense like that where they don't run the good stuff. They kind of get bogged down in really bad stuff, and then the role players get in these long slumps because there's no continuity or no rhythm. It has to be LeBron sort of dictating what's going on the half court, which I understand as a coach. You're he's really the highest IQ player in the league, so you want to give him a lot of that leeway. But I think when you get into the finals, at least, there's another level of adjustment that needs to be made, and that's why the coaches are staring at footage all day long. And as you got to deal with being a defender as a player, you got to deal with your position in the offense. It really is a little bit overload to try and then be I'm going to be calling all the plays from that position as well. I think. And again, I don't want to shit on LeBron necessarily. I just want to point out that I just don't think it's the very viable, long-term title winning solution.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously everything's not hunky dory because of we look at the KYRIE situation. Now, I think that a lot of that is because a guy that plays the way KYRIE plays is marginalized a bit when he's on the court with a guy like LeBron.
So the production doesn't indicate that, right? As far as scoring, and assists is another thing that he's never even in a different situation. I don't know if he'd get 7 or 8 assists a game anyway. But the point.
Well, I know that, and you know that.
Yeah.
But the player doesn't necessarily know that.
Oh, so he might think that's possible too. But
he probably thinks he could have scored 35 points a game last year.
Right, and that's probably true. But either way, but I think he's also bristling against all the other stuff too, just how much carte blanche LeBron has, and I get it, and that's there are, I would say, half the stars in the league would do that, and the other half would be hey, it's cool, man, we're winning, we're gonna what I mean. I don't think he's alone in that feeling of what he's feeling on all those issues. So we're have to wait for that book to come out or someone starts to leak or something because. I'm dying to find out a little bit more about that. I mean, we kind of got Kevin Durant gave us some more insight into why he left OKC, and that's been really revealing. Right. And it's going to be Kyrie's turn to come on a podcast and explain it.
Until Jeff Sessions goes in there and shuts down all those leaks, then
right. Well, yeah, but then he'll also arrest them all for smoking weed.
Yeah. Oh. Hey, all right. We can't talk politics. I know there's not much basketball, but we can't talk politics.
All right. Well, all right. That kind of covered all the big news, though. Anything else that's jumping out at you these days in the NBA front?
No, not really.
Right.
I'm excited for Eurobasket because I want to watch some basketball.
When does that start?
It starts like the last week of this month. And I mean, of course, it's like right over Labor Day weekend, and I'll be, camping out in probably Zion National Park with no internet or television for a few days. So, yes, I'm excited for something I can't watch until I'm back in civilization.
And Eurobasket's not EuroLeague. It is their like Final Four version, or right? Isn't that
it's
what it's
national teams.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. So it's all the national teams playing in a little tournament.
Mm-hmm.
How long does it last?
I think it's almost a month. I will pull the dates up.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So this is like one of their chances to kind of get all the national teams together in between the Olympics and sort of stay fresh and stay, rhythm. Yeah,
exactly. Let's see. The August 31st to September 17th. So it's about 3 weeks.
Right, and we'll get a chance to see Luka Doncic play with Slovenia, which should be pretty interesting because apparently, I did my video on him, and there were a lot of people commenting saying, he really wasn't that good, this and that, whatever. But it turns out that he didn't really play that well in the first half of the year. But in the last half of the year, he really kind of started to mature and really get it. And apparently now he's just, ready to destroy people. So I think that video is going to age nicely.
Yeah, and he's been really, really good. And Slovenia is actually in the same group as Greece and France, so he's going to play some tough opponents. I guess the other night he had 20 points, 4 of 6 on threes, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks in a win over the Czech Republic. And the Czech Republic, I mean, they're not France, they're not Greece, they're not Italy, but it's high level competition. It's national team competition. So the guy can play. Like anybody who watches basketball at all and looks at him knows he can play. It's just how well does he play? When he gets to the NBA and like all this stuff. We're all just kind of guessing. Even with Markelle Fultz, like he was the number 1 pick, and we don't know.
Right. We have an inkling.
Sure, we have an idea. I don't think there's anyone that can watch Luka Doncic now and say, "Oh, this guy's going to be a bust."
Oh, I know. Yeah, and that's the other thing. The dude's 18, you know, and he's been playing. At the worst, he's Ricky Rubio, but he can shoot it. So it seems like there's a lot more upside there, and he's probably still growing. He could very well be a 6'9", 6'10" point guard, and that would be a whole other level of interesting stuff.
I think his size doesn't translate well on video, and I don't know why. But because I've watched, and sometimes you forget that he's like 6'8".
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, he's big. Yeah, he's like 6'5", and then you see him next to a guy who who is 6'8", and you're like, oh shit, he's pretty big. And 6'8" for a point guard. I mean, come on, man. Like that's Magic Johnson territory.
Right.
I mean, part of the reason Magic was special on his own. But the thing that made Magic was the fact that he was 6'9" and special.
Yeah, and by the way, the thing that also really helped him, and people want to crap on his defense, but what you don't understand is that oftentimes, especially back then, and even now, when you would run a pick and roll and it was without the point guard, a lot of times the point guard is clearing to the weak side. And who is supposed to help out on that roll man? Well, normally, if you're guarding the point guard with another point guard, he's going to bump down. It's not going to have an effect. But the Lakers had an advantage because it was Magic who could rotate over as a big and really thwart any kind of pocket passing or any other kind of stuff there. That I don't think people realize that. And I think it's the same thing here with Doncic. He can be that guy who he can contain the point guard, give him an extra 2 feet of space to try and contain him, and then when he rises up to put a hand up, that's a significant deterrent for the shot. But then if he needs to rotate off or he needs to switch, now he's not. There's no there's no sort of big little mismatch, and that's huge.
Well, and he may not be a point guard in the NBA. He may play off ball. He shoots well enough that he could play the wing, and that from a defensive assignment standpoint was probably going to be easier for him, just pure foot speed, but also his playmaking I think is then amplified, right? Like so if he's let's say he goes to L.A. and he's playing next to Lonzo Ball as your point guard, and now you've got this secondary playmaker who's on the wing in Luka Doncic. His job gets easier. He actually probably looks better as a 2 or a 3, and so you don't have that size advantage that you would have at the 1, but you have these other advantages. So I don't know. I mean, we still got another year to watch him in the ACB and watch his game grow. And I mean, with what he was doing this past year, I mean, they're running plays for him, end of game plays for this guy who's, turned 18 during the season. So I think that he's going to be pretty good. Yeah.
And he's on a team with some of the all-time greats in Eurobasket. So that's really impressive that he's gotten to that stature so quickly. So, looking forward to that. And, I mean, other than that, it's like the 3-on-3 tournament's going on, and TBT just finished. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put together I did it one year, the first or second year I did it, and hit a second-round matchup with a team that actually almost won the whole thing and lost in the finals. Shouldn't have played them in the second round, but nonetheless. It was fun. It was interesting, and I kind of really feel like I want to put together a team next year because it might be for more than $2 million next year. We'll see.
I definitely think that you and I should coach a team next year.
Yeah, so we'll put together. We got to raise some funds and let's get some ringers.
Do a GoFundMe.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe we'll do something like that, or we'll see. You know what? The way this is going with my shooting stuff and whatever, we might be generating enough revenue where we can fund it that way. But either way. We don't need that much money to bring in some serious ringers and just run the table because it looks like a lot of fun. And I would love to be able to, film the practices and just have a real, documentation of that whole experience. And I know we could I know we could do it. I know we could put together a team and really just have some fun and destroy some teams.
Well, just to talk about that for a second, the Overseas Elite, the team that is now undefeated, they've never lost in the TBT. The thing is that when you watch them play against like the Syracuse team or the Ohio State team, the difference is they have a ball movement offense. They move the ball and they move without the ball, and then that's it. And these other teams, there's a lot of isolation. They're trying to post up. They're trying to do all these other things. So Overseas Elite is playing a more modern style of offense.
Right.
And that's why they're winning. I mean, now they've got good players. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they definitely have talent, but
sort of. But I think what the add on what your point is that it's a pickup game, and in any pickup game, the more good offense you run, the better shots you're going to generate, the better chance you have to win. Like that is without question. Because these are all like lights out. Like, I couldn't get over when I was coaching that and I was watching other games how lights out everybody was from all over the floor. Like unless you blocked that shot or almost blocked that shot, it was like the net didn't move. But the point being that you need to be able to generate as many good shots as possible. So, it makes perfect sense to me. Like, think about it. If you're playing pickup and the other team is, they're running some pin downs and some pick and roll with short rolls and that kind of stuff, like, you're going to get killed pretty much because the defense won't be there. And so, I mean, I'm telling you, put together a team. We get like 5 or 6 practices over the course of like 10 days. Put in the MIBA defense. Show them some man-to-man principle stuff. Really make it. I'm telling you, because you need to also have. You need to be able to mix it up because the other team's going to go on a run. And I tried doing that, but I had a couple guys who like didn't show up for, we had 4 practices that week before the first game. They didn't show up for 2 of the practices. So I never could get like a 5 that I really felt comfortable that knew the MIBA defense, even though I put it in. And it's not hard when you have pros. So, but the point is that you need to have that to, change the tempo and change the rhythm of the other team, even if it's for a possession or 2. And so I think it's really important to have that, maybe even like a 2-2-1, just a blanket little press that's not aggressive. Anyway, so let's do that. Let's get them on our radar. We'll start working on that like maybe in January and make something happen.
And we'll do a contest for the name. Or are we going to call it Team B-Ball Breakdown?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's what it was last time, but we'll see. I'm not married to it necessarily, but it seems like it fits. But either way, we'll make it. We'll figure it out. And I don't know. I think that covers us for this for the pod. What do you think?
I think so. I hope so.
Yeah. All right. Well. Yeah. Great stuff as always, and we will be back at it. Next week at the very latest, if not before something else happens and we have to have an emergency. But. Dave, thanks for coming on the show again, and don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Dave?
Yes, I am.
Don't forget about audible.com/bballbreakdown for your free 30-day trial. If you listen to it, guess what? Audible has it.